floating screen.
Okay, so we're probably going to give the guys a couple of seconds or a minute to switch over. Can you see, because I'm just seeing my PowerPoint at the moment, so I guess, Christiaan, if you can help me figure out whether...
I can see it. The only thing in the corner is stop sharing hide. You probably want to click on hide so they don't see that bar underneath.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yep, great.
So I was seeing people coming in, or?
I see the presenters or the moderators going in, and see some chat activity here too. So cool. yeah, it seems that everything works fine. Let's wait for the final signal to start.
Cool. So Kent or Gabby, if you guys are in the session as well, I'm just realizing that in speaking with Christiaan, obviously I speak English, Christiaan being from Netherlands. Is there any other English-speaking people attending, so I should continue in English, or is it only Swedish, and should I do the presentation in Swedish? I'm fine either way. I just realized I hadn't checked that.
Most of the responses are in Swedish. I cannot.
Oh, they are. They want to have. They want to have. They want to have Swedish.
I cannot see that.
Okay.
Can't react with attendees is only in Swedish. So
okay, good.
I would suggest that you just start in Swedish and take over in English.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. And the good thing now, Christiaan, is that we don't have any moderators, so we can, I guess, go as long as we want, right? There's no real issue for you and me, so we'll have the morning for ourselves here. Yeah, let's do that. All right. So me and Christiaan were kind of peeking in a little bit for the opening session, Kent and Gabby. So thanks for opening up the event. Well, I guess we just start with some introduction. Peter Söderholm, I'm the Director for Sales Engineering in the Nordics, been with Citrix for so many years. So anyone on this call who doesn't have seen me before, great to meet you virtually. I'll be speaking a little bit about Citrix and a little bit about Citrix and Microsoft better together, which been for a while, especially the Windows Virtual Desktop, which is also the reason we asked Christiaan Brinkhoff to join us. A good friend, a very in some cases, established Citrix community member, CTP, and I think you have a lot of titles back in the days, but maybe you should introduce you in your new role at Microsoft.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And the history and the engagements that I had with this user group, I think go back like 3 years or so. So when times were still like normal. Just quick introduction. I'm Christiaan Brinkhoff. I work now as a principal program manager and community lead at Microsoft in the cloud managed desktops team, which Windows Virtual Desktop is part of too. And as Peter said, pretty engaged with several communities and happy to be here and represent Microsoft to share the WVD and Citrix Better Together story.
Great. So thanks for that, Christiaan. And as I said, you maybe can hang around a little bit also. There's some questions, but normally when we get Microsoft people in, they might not be so skilled on the Citrix side. In your case, it's actually the opposite. I would say you know more about Citrix than technically at least than I do. So you're definitely great to have you. And what we'll talk about, and I'll kind of set the scene a little bit, and we'll go into the Citrix Microsoft relationship specifically around Windows Virtual Desktop, because I think it's a great solution, and also it's something that makes the desktop virtualization solution itself kind of come to life a little bit, and definitely solving a lot of interesting customer problems, but also doing it in a cloud era. So that's significant for, I think, both our companies. When it comes to Citrix for the past year, I think that and every speaker who starts one of these sessions will talk about the pandemic and the challenges and so forth. I think we've shared the same experience as most people do, working from home and so forth. But I've also been fortunate to be part of some really interesting cases where actually Citrix has been part of solving some of the new normal, if you like. We had an event earlier this year with Matthias Brandt, for example, at SEFT, which had a Citrix solution on its way into Asia. Pandemic strike, hundreds of people in China unable to work because they couldn't get into work, did not have a work from home solution. Matthias, I think the quote was, in the sitting meeting, because it's got PVS, CVAD, all the applications, so forth, provisioning up a few hundred workplaces in the actual meeting, and then telling them, guys, why don't you use this link to log in, and maybe you can give it a go, and of course it worked, right? So those are the kind of things that really makes me proud still, that Citrix still surprised me with how effective and efficient we can be in solving different kind of situations they throw at us. Roger Eklund as well at Region Stockholm, we had a session in healthcare. One of the older solutions, I think Jämtlands Läns Landsting was one of the earlier days when I joined Citrix, beginning of the 2000. They were using Roaming Reconnect and Smart Card and moved in a hospital, and still today, I think SLL had over 500,000 reconnects or connects every month. And because they do that so fast versus logging on and logging off, they saved 9.5 days of waiting time every day. That's a lot of wait time, and especially with healthcare being under such a pressure, that again is just amazing and significant. So, the work is not a place, it's what you do, still maintains very solid, and you'll hear Citrix keep talking about the NNS. That's not going away. In fact, it's more relevant than ever. The way we continue to talk about this is creating that great user experience, but letting IT choose when, where, and how to run those applications, whether on-prem, SaaS, whatever. And of course, also maintain the security posture in this new era. And that's actually something you'll hear more from Citrix about. This is something that was kind of driven out of a break-in or a security issue at Google in 2009, I think it is, when they kind of reassessed the security posture, and it was the early stage of the SASE conversation and zero trust conversation that some of you guys probably know about already. Here it's essentially don't trust anything. So any app, any device, any location at any given time should earn its own right and only be giving that right it needs, not a full VPN just to start an internal web application and so forth. So you'll hear Citrix talk much more about this. There's a module, a security architecture, a roadmap. There's many names of it, but it's a concept called SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, which you'll hear a lot of vendors talk about. It's kind of sprung out of networking, but they're adding more application security, cloud security capabilities. It's essentially a combination of SD-WAN and what is known as the CASB, the Cloud Access Security Broker solution that some of the vendors already have as a point solution. I think Citrix benefit here is that we have both. So when you're starting to have branch office breakout and starting to have internet access from the branch office, there was this urge to also protect those branch offices, and you're starting to add complexity in your branch offices. And the notion is that the security posture needs to change. If there's no user in the office, if there's no application in the office, there's no reason to have a firewall in the first place, right? So then you have to have a different way of looking at it. And SASE, it's kind of like a guidance for vendors, I guess, to how do you position and deliver solutions like this. And the combination with local breakout points, as well as some of those security solutions, is something that Citrix will continue to drive. We recently announced something called Secure Internet Access, which is essentially a CASB solution, you could say, if vaguely experienced, but basically it's securing the web applications for malware and secure the connection is as optimized as possible and as secure as possible. And then you have the other concepts around zero trust, RBI, the remote browser isolation capabilities that we have since some time, which you probably know as secure access. as well as some of the analytics and the actual desktop virtualization and the WAN and so forth. So just these capabilities together would help you have the conversation where you basically say, whether you have managed, semi-managed, unmanaged devices, if you get a workspace app on there and are unified, both management and unified delivery as a cloud service, which is essentially the workspace services, coupled with some analytics and some smart network or application-aware networking solution, probably going to be a good solution for you going forward, right? So that you can deliver applications no matter what, and also you can stay or keep your application, your data, where you like it to be. Whether you want to move it to Azure, whether you are merging with another company and they have another cloud service provider, so you're in this multi-hybrid cloud solution. Just keep your applications where you want to run them from an IT point of view when they are secure, most sustainable, most effective, and so forth, and don't have to force the users to certain devices or certain location. So that's kind of where Citrix is going, and you'll see more about this going forward. Now, the interesting thing with Microsoft and Citrix, and there's as many anecdotes as there are people engaged in this, because Citrix and Microsoft have been a long-standing partner. We renewed that partnership earlier this year. By now, there's also some more specific agreements around Microsoft Azure as a preferred cloud platform for Citrix, and you all seen that. We have most capabilities on that, and essentially most customers, most business, and so forth. And also that there's a notion of Citrix and Microsoft working together to also make people do that digital transformation and drive the solution. So, by the way, Christiaan, I'm just realizing I keep speaking English, and I said I was supposed to speak Swedish, and now I get to the point where I'm supposed to switch back to English. So how did that work?
Very efficient.
So as a long-standing presenter, thanks for giving me the nudge that I should switch to Swedish.
So I can switch to Swedish now, so I can take it from you.
So I'll stay for English now, and then you have to remind me afterwards to go to Swedish. Sorry about that. So I just want to also mention that there's actually a published kind of roadmap with some stuff that we work together on, and specifically alluding to, let's say, the workspace when it comes to making sure that Teams optimization and stuff like that works as good as is, for example, from Mac, which is a common kind of exception that people have to deal with. We have some other stuff going on when it comes to single sign-on and so forth. So this is not the specific roadmap that we had with Microsoft, but this was an example of some of the things we're working on. So there's also like a connected roadmap with Citrix Microsoft going forward. So essentially, and Christiaan, you're happy to join me here. I think that when we used to have this slide kind of set the scene a little bit when we speak to people who are new to this, to say that obviously Microsoft have a whole bunch of solutions that we don't interact with or focus on. It's really the three, Office 365, Azure, and Microsoft 365. Those are kind of the three areas we interact with. And then obviously help customer use those solutions as much as possible and whenever they want. Would that be a fair description?
Yeah, I think so. From a holistic view and a hybrid connection perspective, you bring like the existing Citrix environment and as well the benefits of Microsoft Azure closely together. So that holistic workspace view is definitely one of those great benefits that you get with Citrix as a partnership.
Yeah. So what about Windows Virtual Desktop? What is it, and how do you choose to present this when you explain to customers?
Yeah, so I think the next slide is more explaining like what Windows Virtual Desktop is, and this is more the Windows Virtual Desktop and Citrix better together slide. But Windows Virtual Desktop, I can just give a quick like introduction in this slide too about it. The Windows Virtual Desktop is like a platform as a service solution as part of Microsoft. So that means that some of the components are now inside a Microsoft cloud service. And as part of the key components of that, you can get Windows 10 multi-session, Windows 7 support with 3 years extended security updates for free if you run your workloads on Azure, and as well some other benefits like you are not paying for the operating system license on Azure because that's already included in your M365 license. So that are kind of the main like license benefits, so to say. And on top of that, the complete Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service Stack chimes into the components that I just called out. So the licensing benefits, and as well the other things that we do with Citrix as a partnership, because Citrix has an agreed like partnership that can talk directly with our like engineering developers too. So for example, provisioning kind of optimizations on top of Azure are currently being worked on. That's not a NDA thing anymore, so I can talk more like publicly about that. And as well that Citrix Workspace tag to unify your experience for your app, your SaaS apps, as well as your remote apps, your Xen app, your publish apps. That all works as well by one single pane of glass. So that's sort of in a conceptual way how that partnership comes together with both the benefits of Windows Virtual Desktop and Azure, the scalability, and as well the benefits of the Citrix Workspace and the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service Stack. So here you can see, and I think, to be honest, this slide is probably in a lot of heads already, so I'm not going through it as you don't know what is being presented on the screen. So what you can see here is what we think the future in like desktop operating systems as part of virtualization workloads. So on the left side, you see Windows Server. We all know that from Xen app, from virtual apps, and promoting your Windows Server and publishing application in a multi-session, multi-user manner. There are some downsides with that because it's long-term service channel. It's only supported for Office 2019 and not supported for semi-annual channel. So what does semi-annual channel and long-term service channel mean? So long-term means longer term, so that's an easy way to remember it. But that means that you get every 3 years. So let's say on an average 3 years, the latest and greatest updates as part of Windows Server. So let's say Windows Server 2016 to 19. At 19, you get like the new updates to the operating system available. With Windows 10, we took that step to Windows as a service, which means semi-annual channel, so you get every 6 months the latest and greatest feature updates in a new build of Windows 10. So for example, 2004 and 20H2 in the latest new builds that have been released. So that benefit, and as well the benefits of multi-session from Windows Server, have been brought together on top of Windows 10, and that's called Windows 10 Multi-Session or Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session. And in this queue, like being more technical, it's called Windows 10 Enterprise for Virtual Desktops. So you can use that as part of the partnership on Azure. It's exclusively only available on Azure, and it supports as well UWP apps, and it has that latest and greatest like feature improvements, and as well the experience that you know from Windows 10 single session personal desktops. So persistent desktops that you normally use, which are a little bit more expensive, but with Windows 10 multi-session, you bring that same experience in a multi-session manner together. So you can scale as well based on their working hours, and as well bring that multi-session capability together to be very efficient with your fixed price or your costs for your users per month, so to say. So that's kind of like the offerings in terms of modern operating systems that we want to provide in like future virtual desktop technologies moving forward. I don't say Windows Server will move away. I'm only saying that the best experience can be reached with Windows 10 single and multi-session in the future. So next slide. So this is a great picture, by the way, of me reminding joining Microsoft. So this picture is already almost 3 years old when the FSLogix acquisition happened. So FSLogix was a company that was leading the profile delivery, profile management, and application delivery space, or mostly the profile delivery space, because like 3 years or 4 or 5 years back, Office 365 on the virtualized environment was almost impossible to run without like a containerized like profile technology that FSLogix delivered. So this picture was taken like 3 months after the acquisition by Microsoft, and reminds me of being at Microsoft Campus, Building 92. Some folks might remember this statue. It's a famous one at the Redmond campus, and here's where the complete FSLogix team, or almost complete FSLogix team, came together for a group picture. So let me explain you a little bit about what FSLogix is. Next slide. Thanks. So here you can see the solutions of FSLogix that you can use as part of the Windows Virtual Desktop partnership. So we have been seeing a very broad adoption of the FSLogix technologies, and that's great. And a great result as well from one of the decisions, the key decisions that we made on making FSLogix available for almost every customer that is using virtualization today, whether it's with Citrix or just RDS, or it doesn't really matter. Everybody can use FSLogix, and Citrix brings like extra value on top of FSLogix to integrate the FSLogix Profile container in the workspace environment management solution to control that and monitor that, for example, from that management experience too. So the Profile container, just really quick, is the profile solution as part of FSLogix. It's now called Microsoft FSLogix, by the way. So we added Microsoft in front of it, but we left FSLogix in place. So just to remind you of the quality and the experience that you had as well before the acquisition. So the profile container consolidates the profile, the Windows profile, inside a VHD or VHDX, so in a virtual hard drive. And the great thing about that is that it tricks the operating system that there's like a redirection in place over a block-based like channel to the storage environment, but the operating system doesn't know anything about that. And that creates a very fast experience. And as well that the operating system tricks the programs the same as when they are like locally stored in a local profile. And you have the benefits of roaming that profile to another location. And we're going to talk about that like more technical, because this is all pretty high level in a later slide where I'm explaining, okay, you can store it on Azure Files and on Azure NetApp Files as part of Azure to leverage another platform as a service solution. So that's the profile container. We have something called the Office container too. That only includes the Office-specific caching data. So there are some opportunities that you can combine the profile and the Office container if you want to replicate, for example, because of BCDR, HCDR purposes to a different region, and you want to exclude the Office-specific data, you can use them both together and only replicate the profile container to the other region, for example. So that's a possibility that you can take into account while designing and making your strategy around HCDR as part of your Citrix environment. App masking is another solution that is part of that same agent where you can hide applications from the same image, for example. So you can completely hide an executable and all the folders related to the software program to hide them for a user on like Windows 10 multi-session. So for example, you have an administration application, user 1 has rights to that, user 2 has no rights to that. They log on to the same machine and user 2 cannot see anything of that application. Even when that user goes to program files, the complete folder structure is gone. So from a security perspective, that could be a great solution that you can leverage. And then we have the Java redirection solution, which helps you to run multiple versions of Java on your Windows 10 multi-session machine. To be honest, Java, I hope you are not using it anymore, but it's still around, and it probably still is around for the next couple of years. So I hope that level set a little bit. No, I'm done here, so you can go to the next slide. But I hope to explain and level set you a little bit on like the capabilities that you can use as part of the FSLogix technologies. So go ahead, Peter.
Good one, Christian. Thank you, and we'll get you back in later in the deck as well. But of course, these are spot-on capabilities.
Just a reminder that you need to do it in Swedish.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Christian. Okay, nu ska vi se om vi kan köra lite svenska också. Men det är bra. Thanks, Christian. I will go back to Swedish and we'll come back to you in just a while. So, men vi kör lite på svenska här nu då. Om man säger så här då, vad är liksom anledningen till att vi ska ha Citrix i samarbete med Windows Desktop? Och faktum är att det som är lite kul med hela det här är ju att just därför att Microsoft har lanserat det här som en molntjänst, en DAS-tjänst, så har den ju fått upp ögonen på många personer som kanske inte har tittat på den här typen av lösningen tidigare. Och det är, tycker jag är fortfarande ett intressant därför att teknologin i sig, som jag sa tidigare, på ett väldigt elegant sätt löser problem. Framförallt hela det här partner, access, konsulter, människor som behöver ha tag i intern IT som inte är en del av organisationen, så är det ju vanligt förekommande. Och Varför man ska ha Citrix är egentligen 3 saker. Det här med hybrid cloud kommer vi komma och fortsätta prata om, och det är klart att den ligger där under lång tid eftersom folk inte kan flytta allting på en gång. Och sen så gällande operations, så det här är ju egentligen inget som jag behöver tala om för folk på det här mötet specifikt, eftersom stora anledningar till att man använder Citrix för IT har ju varit just att det finns ett enkelt och säkert sätt att hantera stora miljöer på ett väldigt, väldigt smart sätt. Men också säkerställa användarupplevelsen självklart då. Så de 3 sakerna ligger fast. Top 10, så här, om man vill veta någonting, så tycker jag väl att autoscale, app-layeringen, VEMmen och såklart HDXen kanske är de största sakerna. Men en sak som också har dykt upp mer och mer är faktiskt session recordingen. Just eftersom det är människor som man kanske inte litar på samma sätt, så har det varit intressant att också kunna slå på den här session recordingen vid vissa tillfällen också. Så det är egentligen de sakerna som står ut, och vi kommer prata mer om dem. På det sättet man köper Citrix är ju en licens per användare. Det finns ju concurrent, eller det finns en named eller device. Och då köper man antingen en CVAD standard som är egentligen specifikt för Azure. Eller så köper man premium som har mer management och provisioneringsdelarna, stöd för dem. Eller så går man med Workspace som är den större SKUn som är single sign-on till webbappar och access till dokument och microapp och hela den konversationen. Så det är de 3 liksom, sätten man köper Citrix ovanpå Windows Azure Desktop. Hybrid Cloud, och det här är ju också inget nytt så jag tänkte inte spendera så mycket tid på det, men självklart är det ett och samma adminverktyg, du har ett och samma MCS-verktyg, imagehantering och så vidare, så att du kan spinna upp maskiner baserat på var du behöver det någonstans och flytta arbetslaster väldigt elegant emellan, och samtidigt låta folk ha till exempel en desktop i Azure, men samtidigt kanske ha någon publicerad applikation som man fortfarande behöver on-prem därför att databasen är där och så vidare. Så att slippa ha 2 miljöer är ju såklart önskvärt, eftersom vi kan på ett som är effektivare sätt hantera hela miljön som en enhetlig miljö. Vi har också stöd för inte bara Microsoft, även om Microsoft är vår särklass viktigaste och största partner där vi har mest funktioner, så kan vi också, om man merge acquisitions och så vidare, om det finns folk som kunder som redan har andra typer av molntjänster, så går det ju så självklart att inte bara ha resurslokationer där, men också hantera olika typer av autentiseringar så att man får en enhetlig användarupplevelse men också en enhetlig managering. Och såklart, Christian var inne på det lite grann, så även om Windows 10 är kanske den mest naturliga desktop-operativsystemet just nu, så är det många som menar på att man har helt enkelt bättre prestanda på server-OS. Alltså multi-Windows funkar bättre på samma hårdvara än på Windows 10, upp till en 25-30%. Så det är klart att det kommer finnas folk där som vill fortsätta använda server-OS, och då kan man göra det. Och inte minst Linux då, som också blir sakta men säkert vanligare. Inte för att det kanske är vanligare som operativsystem, men framförallt att folk får upp ögonen för att vi kan även köra Linux. Framförallt utvecklare gillar ju det här att slippa ha flera olika maskiner och enkelt kunna komma åt dem bara man är hemma eller man är på jobbet och så vidare. När det gäller själva operations-delen så är det ju egentligen, och det här är ju ett sätt också för oss att visa på kostnadsbesparingen som vi anser faktiskt bär en stor del av kostnaden för Citrix. Vi kommer att titta på det på slutet, för att när vi betalar Azure egentligen per minut, så är det ju intressant av hur mycket virtuella maskiner vi behöver körande, hur många vi behöver och hur snabbt vi kan adressera saker på den här plattformen. Och där är ju Citrix traditionellt sett varit väldigt duktiga. Så att även fast vi har en hybridmiljö med on-prem och i Azure, så har vi fortfarande en gemensam direct där vi snabbt kan se connection failures. Load evaluators blir mer viktigt när vi nu har lastbalansering som också bygger att fylla maskiner innan vi sprider ut dem. På den gamla vanliga sättet körde vi en användare på alla 5. Om man har 15 maskiner så kör man en användare på varje, och så flyttar man tills man har 2, 3 och 4 och så vidare. Nu vill vi fylla servrar innan vi flyttar över till nästa. Och då är det mer viktigt att ha koll på hur de här load evaluatorerna fungerar, så att vi fortfarande har bra prestanda. Och vi menar ju själva att vi kan lasta de här VM:arna på 80% av vad de klarar av jämfört med kanske Microsoft som har BVD Native har ju bara per användare lastbalansering, vilket gör att du kanske bara lastar dem till 60% av vad de klarar av. alltså inloggningsprestanda och de här sakerna vet ni sedan tidigare. Samtidigt också det här med nätverkuppkopplingarna som man är beroende av. Där vi enkelt i en rapport kan se client latency, server latency och total RTP, vilket gör att där kan vi ta reda på, är det servern som är problemet, är det backend eller är det från klienten? Och det här är ju en sån här underskattad triage-rapport som väldigt enkelt också funkar även när vi flyttar dem till Azure, så att vi även där kan enkelt ta reda på vad problemet är. Eftersom nu har vi ett nytt datacenter som vi måste hantera och då funkar det lite annorlunda kanske med latency och vad folk kopplar upp och så vidare. Framförallt om vi backhåller trafiken för backen då, att det är databaser som ska komma som fortfarande finns kvar on-prem. Och såklart vi kan titta på VM-maskin, alltså VM, hur den fungerar och så vidare utifrån ett VDA-perspektiv eller applikationsperspektiv. Så det här är också en sån sak som inte finns på ett bra sätt i native DVD:n. Att kunna felsöka och ta reda på, liksom, om vi har en applikationskrasch till exempel, att vi enkelt tar reda på vad det är problemet är och vi får en full beskrivning och vi kan skicka den här till någon utvecklare som kan så att säga, ta reda på vad problemet är. Det här behöver man ju oftast ha tredjepartsleverantörer eller bygga egna lösningar för, som oftast inte är lika effektiva som våran, såklart då, tycker vi, eftersom vi har gjort det här under så pass många år. Så att verktygen har blivit väldigt, väldigt effektiva på att hantera det. MCS, jag tänkte inte nämna så mycket mer, men det är självklart att istället för att ha, det har vi märkt att många som kör native, även om App-Attach är på gång, så är det många som sitter och kör fulla VM:ar med SSCM, därför att det är så man har deployat det traditionellt. Medan många som kommer från Citrix både uppskattar och vurmar för både MCS:en och PVS:en såklart. Så att imagehanteringen och applayeringen är ju ett annat koncept, men det är ju såklart en jättestor skillnad i hur vi adresserar det här. Och inte minst att den här teknologin möjliggör att vi inte behöver ha premiumdiskar i VM:arna heller, utan vi har 3 standarddiskar. Alltså en appdisk, en cachedisk och layerdisk. Vilket gör att vi har en betydligt lägre IOPS eller diskkostnad för att köra de här med en bättre prestanda. Och såklart också om vi vill använda user-delen såklart med vad det innebär. En annan sak är ju såklart autoscale då, som funkar lite annorlunda än on-prem i formen av att vi vill fylla servrar och samtidigt så vill vi stänga ner, och inte bara stänga ner men ta bort maskiner så att de inte kostar, även om de inte är så länge du allokerar disk och CPU och så vidare för en stängd maskin, så har du fortfarande kost som du inte har när du har tagit bort maskinen, om jag förstår saken rätt. Det här gör vi jävligt elegant såklart med autoscale, så vi både kan sätta antal maskiner men också sätta buffert som är olika off hours och peak hours. Och dessutom kan du sätta det per delivery-grupp då. Så det finns en autoscale i VVD:n, men det är PowerShell-baserat och den har inte alls den här intelligensen, vilket gör att du vågar inte ligga så nära med hur många maskiner du behöver. Vi kan ju gå ner till bara 10% off hours, så att folk, om de får ett akut problem och behöver gå in och jobba mitt i natten, så finns det maskiner, samtidigt som vi inte ska ha folk körande. Det är flera POC som jag har kollat på och varit involverad i som där kör folk 24/7 liksom. De har inte kommit dit att bara stänga ner maskinerna. Så det här är såklart en jättestor grej. Och att våran autoscale jobbar tillsammans med MCS:en. Så att vi provisionerar ju rätt maskiner för rätt användargrupp. Om vi har en Asien-arbetargrupp så har de en annan peak hours än norska gruppen eller svenska gruppen eller vad man ska säga, delivery groups. Så att vi har anpassat det här baserat på vilka användartyper. Den är ju en jätteviktig del i att få ner kostnaden såklart och följa användarbeteendet med vår lastbalansering. Den i sig gör ju då att vi har resursbaserad lastbalansering istället för användarbaserad, gör ju att vi kan fylla servrarna med 80% istället för 65%, tycker vi då. Eftersom du inte vet vad användarna gör för någonting så kan du inte lasta dem lika mycket. Du kan inte skicka på användare om du inte vet vad de faktiskt gör, eller de som finns där. Och dessutom så är ju VM:en intressant eftersom den, som vi vet, hjälper till att minska CPU-kraven för vissa CPU-intensiva applikationer och helt enkelt ger rätt CPU till rätt användare vid rätt tillfälle. Både även med RAM och med IOPS. Och det i sig driver ju ner också att vi helt enkelt får in mer folk på samma hårdvara eller samma användare på mindre resursutnyttjande. Tittar vi på när det själv gäller användarupplevelsen så är det ju såklart de gamla vanliga sakerna också. Det är ju HDX-protokollet. gateway-tjänsten till exempel. En sak som inte är helt trivialt, det är att få bara sån sak som single sign-on. Nu finns det ju möjligheter med VVD:n att göra ADFS och på så sätt få single sign-on, men det är ju inte så att jag har pratat med flera cloud-arkitekter på Microsoft som överhuvudtaget inte rekommenderar ADFSen, och då blir det ju problemet att du får dubbla inloggningar, och gärna om du får osynk mellan lösenorden också, så kan du hamna i en riktigt skön snurra. Istället så använder vi ju och har möjlighet till single sign-on och med eller utan fasen, såklart lite beroende på vad det är för lösning, men det spelar ingen roll om det är ett AD-konto eller ett Azure AD-konto, en Okta, Gmail och så vidare, eller G Suite account, så kan vi ju erbjuda single sign-on inte bara till VVD:n men också till alla andra resurser. Så det här är också en jätteviktig sak som många kanske lever med under piloten, men definitivt inte kommer leva i någon storskalig lösning. Man vill ju ha en single sign-on för att starta en session, och även i sin session att vi kan göra single sign-on när vi går till ett fileshare eller starta OneDrive eller någonting. Utöver det så finns det en hel rad säkerhetsfunktioner då. Och de här känner ju alla till, så jag tänker inte gå in så djupt på dem. Non-domain joined VM är ju intressant att vi kommer med stöd för det, så att man också kan isolera vissa externa användare som inte ska ha ett konto som är med i AD, som då exponerar resten av miljön, utan kan isolera dem, köra dem isolerat i en Azure-instans och sen fortfarande få access in från den instansen, och då slå på session recording och ta bort klipp och klister och så vidare, så får vi en väldigt säker användning av en användare och enhet som vi egentligen inte litar på. Så det har varit väldigt uppskattat. Och det här blir också väl i linje med hela den här Zero Trust-konversationen av kontinuerlig monitorering med rätt policies baserat på det resultatet som EPA:n gör, så kan vi ta bort saker och ting eller slå på monitorering och så vidare och bara erbjuda rätt access vid rätt tillfälle då. Så har vi den här med keylogger och screen capture. Det är klart du kan ta en bild med kameran liksom, så det kan vi inte ta bort. Men det är rätt elegant lösning igen att slippa behöva ha massa managering av enheterna och ändå kunna mitigera från keylogger och screen capture-verktyg ute på enheterna då, igen till de här omanagerade eller semimanagerade enheterna. Så ingår i den liksom i Workspace-appen, så fort du börjar knappa i Workspace-appen så är det inte möjligt att göra det. Och sen kan de inte annat lägga in en watermarking då, som gör att om du tar en bild så har du i alla fall en spårbarhet på var den här bilden är tagen någonstans. Och även slå på session recording till exempel för att kunna hantera då en ökad skydd av till exempel intellectual property, som det är så fint heter. Alltså information och data som sen ska användas. Analytics-delen är ju också intressant i form av att vi kan bygga de här användarupplevelsekategorierna liksom, så att en kombinerad resultat av latency, logon duration och så vidare. Och det här blir ju igen intressant när vi flyttar ut Azure, så kanske det funkar lite annorlunda än on-prem med var profiler laddas och GPOer slår eller var applikationer finns någonstans. Då kan vi ju på ett enkelt sätt med Analytics då klicka in på Bangalore-kontoret, se att det är 55 användare med väldigt dålig användarupplevelse. Vi tittar och ser att det kanske troligtvis har med logon-delen att de har väldigt långa, mer än 2 minuters inloggning, och sen kan vi se att profilerna är ganska stora. Och väldigt snabbt så kan vi klicka oss ner och se de här sakerna. Det är ju självklart fortsatt en väldigt viktig del i att se till att användarna har en bra användarupplevelse. Nästa sak har det här med hur vi drar trafiken då. För nu när vi börjar få flera olika datacenter i Azure, så blir det också viktigare med hur drar vi trafiken mellan användaren och sin desktop. Och då har vi ju ett antal sådana här gateways i en hel drös med Microsoft-poppar. Eller vår egna poppar, men i Azure, som gör att när användaren befinner sig så letar vi efter den närmsta Azure-poppen, och sen så går vi in den vägen och så kör vi Azure till Cloud-connectorn eller direkt till VDA:n tack vare rendezvous-protokollet. Flyttar användaren någon annanstans så försöker vi komma närmast, för att Azure Backbone visar sig vara väldigt bra. De flesta kunderna vill ju dra trafiken över den vägen, och om inte annat så finns det möjlighet att själv styra lite på de här sakerna. Och även att vi har failover, så att går en pop ner så kommer klienten att automatiskt omdirigeras till närmast pop, och sen på det viset kan vi nå våran VDA. Jag tänkte dra igenom lite den här också. Dels att jag kan skicka iväg den så man kan använda den för att diskutera med sina respektive kollegor eller med en kund. För att även om VVD känns ganska enkelt som en DAF-tjänst, så är det ganska många moving parts i den här för att få det här att fungera. Och det vi gör när vi integrerar med VVD är ju självklart att vi tar bort arkitekturen kring själva DAS-plattformen från Microsoft och ersätter den med våran Citrix Cloud. Vi lägger också till cloud-konnektorer och MCS-delen i Azure Subscription som är kundens egen subscription. Och vi lägger möjlighet genom cloud-konnektorer on-prem, så kan vi koppla ihop allt det här så att det blir en enhetlig lösning. Utöver det så är det såklart att vi använder vårt HDX-protokoll som gör att vi har fler olika typer av klienter och bättre support. Och kanske sist men inte minst då flexibiliteten dels med hybrid cloud så att vi kan koppla oss även till andra resurslokationer, och även autentiseringen, att vi kan integrera med en rad olika IDP:er som gör att kunden får logga in, framförallt externa användare får logga in med vad de kan och inte behöver tvingas in i något lokalt AD-konto och sen så eller Azure AD och sen AD-konto för att komma in. Och sen om man har Workspace så kan man också koppla det här med single sign-on till övriga SaaS-appar självklart då. So Christiaan, I believe we talked about this before, that this is the way we kind of present how we interact from an architectural point of view, and I went through the different ones. I think you had a few slides around some of the capabilities that you wanted to talk about, which was around storage, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you looked at that architecture slide, you saw a component to store either your data as well as your profiles on Azure Files. And that's another like platform as a service solution that you can leverage on Azure to store your App-Linux profile containers on. So you simplify as well your data infrastructure, so to say, so you don't have to spin up a VM on IaaS and create a file share or something like that. With Azure Files, you just go into the Azure portal, or you do it via PowerShell or the Azure CLI, and create a file share, a storage account and a file share, and then store your App-Linux profile on top of that. And if you do your proper like proactive sizing and designing, it performs great too on large scale, enterprise scale. So this slide sums up the different options that you have. You have as well the option to use Azure NetApp Files, which is a partner that we have with a partnership that we have with NetApp. NetApp brings as well the same platform as a service benefits to the offering. So it's the same kind of way configuring it. Just create the file share and then you configure that in Logix and then you're good to go. The main differences between Azure Files and Azure NetApp Files are related to further integration with other services. So for example, if you use Azure or if you use NetApp on-prem, then Azure NetApp Files in Azure would probably be a better fit because you can replicate from on-prem your data against the Azure cloud easily. So a hybrid connection would be possible. Azure Files has like the best integration with like other Azure services like Azure Backup or replication, ZRS, GRS replication on the backend automatically. So you really need to design properly based on your requirements. What is the best fit for your use case as part of your Citrix and WVD environment? There's another one which is called Storage Spaces Direct. That's a more like do-it-yourself way on top of IaaS. I don't suggest you to do that. It's more like if you don't see another option because you have an application that needs that kind of option that you can configure in like the server operating system, then that could be a good option to choose. But as you can see across the different options and specifically the Azure Files and Azure NetApp Files option, the amount of like apps, for example, and as well the size and capacity matches up like the enterprise use cases up to like 50,000 seats, for example, concurrent, if that's your use case. So options for any use case to make a short summary out of that. So
cool.
If you go down the road of using Azure Files or Azure NetApp Files, as I just said, you need to do proper sizing. So we have different SKUs there. So for Azure Files, you have the standard and a premium SKU. So Azure Files Standard and Azure Files Premium. So the premium one gives you more IOPS and more capabilities for like backing up your data, for example. We recently did a price drop as well in 30%, and we increased the IOPS, the standard IOPS, the bursting capabilities within the premium tier. So I really encourage you to start using the premium tier because the price differences are not that much, and the premium tier gives way more capabilities in terms of the amount of users, concurrent sessions that can land on that storage platform. In terms of FSLogix, the usage of FSLogix, just to give you a heads up on that, if you calculate your Azure Files and Azure Files Premium solution beforehand, keep in your mind that per user on an average, like 10 IOPS are being consumed and 50 IOPS during the sign-in and sign-off phase of your session. And with Azure NetApp Files, we have similar tiers. So that's called the standard tier, the premium tier, and there's even an ultra tier, which we don't see quite often happening in like a profile, like Windows Virtual Desktop scenario. But it could be something that you want to use, but you can stack up different storage layers too to increase the IOPS that you need. The same for Azure Files Premium or Standard, by the way. So if you want to learn more about that, if you go to akms/storage-wvd, then you find all the options more like in detail and can make a decision wisely. There's another page, by the way, if you go to ak.ms/FSLogix best practices, that gives you even more information and some architectural like examples of designing your FSLogix and storage layer of your Citrix environment, for example.
Cool. Thanks, Christian. And I want to kind of wrap this up. I think we are in only a few minutes. I don't think there's any. Would you hang around a little bit afterwards as well in the breaks for some, if there's some questions? Because I don't want to. I have roughly two slides, and then I should be able to finish off on time.
We'll stick around.
There is actually one question in the chat as well, and it is for Christiaan, which is, when will there be a simple GUI for FSLogix, or a great GUI?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's like personal as well, what is simple and what is not, but let's make this clear in a unified way, because we use those terms in the presentation too. So we are exploring different options, and one of those options is to use the Microsoft Endpoint Manager console to configure FSLogix from a more management console perspective instead of using registry keys or GPOs. So that are the current kind of plans, or could be a plan, so to say. But for the rest, Citrix integrates within the workspace environment management solution the configuration pieces as well of the Profile Container solution. So in there you can do it more from an simple experience if you want to do it today.
Super.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it did, for sure. We are actually really running out of time. It's 1 minute left, Peter, if you want to go through your 2 slides.
Sure.
And there is one more question that Mika Lindholm can ask, probably direct to Peter or Christiaan, related to smart cards. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know me, right? On stage, I'm impossible to stop. So I'll go on, but I'll keep this brief. Sorry. No, I just wanted to wrap this up with, this is the last slide, by the way. So the thing is it's kind of interesting, is the fact that you pay consumption, and that with the better load balancing, less ingress traffic, and more efficient use of the power of the compute power through the VIM. This is a use case where you have 700 concurrent users as a standard user multi-Windows 10, and then you have 1,800 developers, which is considered heavy. With this, including the auto-scale saving, the compute cost, not the licenses cost, but the compute cost of this standard Western Europe, London pricing, 7 to 6 working hours, with 100% running the VMs, that's 1.9 million in Azure cost. The licenses to add Citrix on top of that is 800K. So that will be a monthly cost with VVD of $22. But because of these things that I just talked about, the compute, the standard versus premium disk, the lessing, so forth, especially the auto scale, there is significant money to be saved because we can actually get more people on the same piece of tin. So about 700K in saving, 300 is part of the auto scale, which actually gives you almost $1 million of saving. And this sounds great. This is coming from Citrix. So do you trust this? Well, it's something that we spend quite a lot of time on. We're in dialogue with Microsoft. We just had this for the Microsoft Black Belts the other week, and we're going to publish this as a web tool, Microsoft kind of approved, so that you can mess around with these kind of numbers yourself. And while in this case, it looks great, because as soon as you start adding normal servers or full VM Windows 10 desktops, the cost is going to increase significantly. So multi-Windows server is obviously the most cost-benefit solution. But in this example, we're actually lowering the total cost, and we're carrying all of our cost because of the lack of it. And if you then kind of add on some of the monitoring to get some of the monitoring tools working, you have to have multiple VM or a couple of VMs in your Azure tenant. I'm again speaking English, but fair enough, we'll continue this way so Christiaan can follow as well. Also the operations cost, and we believe that this example, there's about 2 image managements per month, 3% support calls, and a couple of application updates. That takes also a significant part of the total cost. And we still believe that we can cut costs with compute, but specifically with operations. So happy to share and help you guys if you have a use case about this, you want to kind of run some numbers. This is standard CVAD premium user device cost. It's 107, and it's a 3-year contract that we're using in calculation. So this is something that when we present this and people can run their own numbers, it's been really successful to actually say Citrix, Microsoft better together, and not just as a marketing flaw, but really say that we believe you can get better user experience, more effective management, and actually lowering or at least carrying most, if not all, of the cost of Citrix in one go. All right, so that's fashionably late, a few minutes over, apologizing, Gabby, but I'll stop there. And Gabby, if you can come on and tell what people should do so they can kind of get to the next session or what they should do, but I'm done on my side. Thank you very much, guys.
Super, thank you both Peter and Christian. And I switched to Swedish. Våra breakout-sessioner som började klockan 10 är det bara att hoppa in i. Ni har anmält er till någon av de 3 parallella. Jag antar att ni hittar i plattformen för att hitta in till dem. De ligger på ett lite annat ställe än just den här main stagen då. Så lycka till. Och tack Peter och thanks Christian.
Tack Kevin, vi hörs.